So we continue, and we had stopped at this point, slaying of Moha and not Maya. In fact, he says you cannot slay Maya because Maya is the Lord's Maya. What we call as slaying Maya, you cannot slay Maya. It is the divine's power which has gone into this creation. But there are two Mayas or two aspects of it, the Avidyamayi and the Vidyamayi. Several examples. A child who goes to school feels my parents are very cruel. I am talking of the initial. They are sending me to this horrible place. That's Avidyamayi Maya. Do the parents listen to the child? No. If the child stops going to the school, then they are worried. So they insist that the child should go to the school because now this is Vidyamayi Maya as an example. That is how he will grow through the whole process. So this is the difference between Maya. Now Moha is when we have a wrong relation, in fact the word used is delusional attachment with things. Tatra ko moha ka shoka. So what is the delusional attachment? This is mine. Difference may seem very subtle, but you are dealing with the whole world of various relations and with everybody, like Shri Krishna. With everyone he is dealing, and everybody feels, if you read again, because these days Bhagavad is full of how each of them tells Sri Krishna when he is going to Dwarka, going back after the war, that see, everybody has that. Everybody is saying, I have seen you like this. Another person is saying, I have seen you like this. Third person, with all of them, Shri Krishna has dealt with in different ways. And yet, he himself remains seated above, free, transcendent. So, there are two ways of dealing with the world. One is moha, very simply put, in very gross way. The moment I say, this is mine, there is moha. I-ness and minus is moha. The moment I say that this is as much the divine's as I am the divine's, and I must deal with it divinely, then I am dealing with it in the right way. So there is not that sting of pain, sorrow, cutting off, leaving things and all that human beings go through. But instead we discover the right relation. And that is a little subtle thing which we need to get corrected in our life. So you cannot slay Maya because Maya is the power of the Lord. You can't slay power of the Lord which differentiates and creates multiplicity. But you can slay Moha. Moha is the wrong attachment to things. So here comes this beautiful thing that Sri Aurobindo says. We are on page 381. For in fact, the knowledge is there concealed in the ignorance itself. It has rather to be unveiled than acquired. It reveals itself rather than is learned by an inward and upward self-unfolding. Again, practically. So if you are afraid, let's say of a relationship, this may happen, that may happen. So you want to run away. That's one approach. The other approach is, let me discover the right way where I am not influenced. How does the divine relate with this world of multiplicity? Every house is his house, but he claims nothing. That's what he is, Krishna and Shiva together. And if we can understand this, and that's where the truth of the individuality is, that there is a certain poise that the Eternal has taken in this play, where like a wave, he wants to deal with creation from a certain angle, certain way. That's our individuality. And that's what we see, that, it doesn't cancel other individuality. That ego does. It doesn't claim anything because it knows it's a wave from the Eternal expressing in a certain way. One is not attached to names and forms. And yet, one does much more beautifully, much more powerfully, whatever one is engaged in doing, because it's not the limited ego, but the portion of the divine that is doing in him. And we have so many stories in Indian thought that describe this play, this subtle difference. We'll come to the story as and when, because otherwise I have a problem of getting into stories and forgetting the script. So, okay, we'll come to page 381. And so, the difficulty, first he states, so what is the difficulty? The difficulty is, but first it will be convenient to meet and get out of the way one difficulty that inevitably arises. The difficulty of admitting that even given the immanence of the divine in us, even given our individual consciousness as a vehicle of progressive evolutionary manifestation, the individual is in any sense eternal, or that there can be any persistence of individuality after liberation has been attained by unity and self-knowledge. This is how that, well, it is a role to play. After the role is complete, it's almost like, if I take an example, somebody saying that, well, the seed has grown into a tree, now dig deep, cut away the roots and the seed, it has no meaning. It's the same thing, that, well, the seed has done its purpose. Always it will be there, connecting that eternal, the entire genome is there inside. And if you cut it away, so that's where he is touching upon this difficulty, because this is how it is explained, that yes, individuality has a place till you have discovered the oneself. When you discover the oneself, individuality has no place. And we have songs like that. Kabir Das ji is saying, ki, matki fut gayi, pani nikal gaya, now it has no meaning at all. So this is, it's not reconciliation. This is a difficulty of the logical reason and must be met by a larger and more Catholic enlightening reason. Or if it is a difficulty of spiritual experience, it can only be met by a wider resolving experience. It can indeed be met also by a dialectical battle, which Sri Aurobindo doesn't want to engage in. So either we have to go into a wider reasoning or a more complete spiritual experience. And we are so fortunate to be at the feet of Sri Aurobindo, who had it all. So he could both express it logically, and he had the experience of the Maya, of the true individual, of the cosmic individual, or the cosmic universal divine, of the immanent divine, the transcendent divine, and the supramental. So he is the best teacher for all of us to take us through it all. That's how one should read the Life Divine. It's a book written by him, and like a child, he is explaining step by step. He is not rushing through. So a few lines below on the same page, page 381, last 6 lines from below, we see, we must have a clear, pure, subtle, and flexible mind in order that we may fall as little as possible into that ordinary mental habit of our kind, which turns truth itself into a purveyor of errors. Or how does truth become purveyor of errors? So how mother kept people. So there was someone who complained to the mother. Mother, he is always complaining of sadhaks, of ashram. He has nothing positive to say about anyone. Why have you kept him here? And this is true because he was doing it. So mother said, you know what? All that you say is true. But if you say one thing against me, then you see his reaction. So the sadhak goes and says something against, just tries. And he is literally going to browbeat him. And then he says, yes, mother, I had not seen it this way. Now you see the difference. When you have a complete truth, there is a partial truth. It is true and it should not be there. Why, go into... When you look at it from the largest perspective, it is the Divine Mother's working. But at the same time, you have to understand there is another side of the truth, a deeper truth, a more profound truth, which is important, as very beautifully summarized in one sentence of Sri Aurobindo, which I always remember, and which I think everybody should remember, so I keep saying it. The ignorant people judge the master by the disciples. The wise Judge the disciples by the master. Rishabh Chandji put it in a different way. He said, Mother, when people come here and they see us, they may not want to ever stay here. But when people come and see you, they will never want to go away from here. So what is the real worth of a person, individual? Not in itself. You have to see the totality. I know somebody's experience, and I won't mention the name, but I am suddenly reminded of someone seated here, that in a dream that, suddenly she sees Matsya Avatar. Matsya Avatar is asking people, getting very angry, he's in an angry mood. He's letting people in and out, God knows all kinds of things. And suddenly this lady goes there and he sees the mother's ring on her finger. Then he suddenly changes. He says, oh, Aurobindo, okay. So you see, he is seeing the truth from a different perspective. The world may judge us in a certain way, but the divine and those beings judge us in another way. If divine has chosen, picked up, there must be some merit. Maybe I have not discovered. And if I have not discovered, perhaps it's for my safety. Because if I discover it, perhaps I may become very egoistic, like Aurobindo once asked Nirodha. You discover yourself. Why there is that special grace? No doubt, what is special grace? So there is this recipient, and sometimes the divine himself wails. Because if he reveals, it may be too much even for an individual consciousness to take it. So when we look at things from that total perspective, things change. So that's what he is saying, that we must have a clear reason first of all, which is missing nothing. Pure reason. What is pure reason? Pure reason is actually very rare. Where you can, the only person, if you really want to read pure reason, is Kant. Not C-A-N-T, K-A-N-T. So, Kant is, I had read it long back. And I said, my God, for this man, it's all in a world of domain of reasoning, logic. It's not dealing with my everyday life. Pure reason can take us to that. It is not like, oh no, but you have seen that man, he is horrible, his behavior you have seen. That's not pure reason. Pure reason is not even that, well, have you seen this man, he is so horrible. Yes, certain things are good in him. That is also not pure reason. Pure reason goes independent of this entire thing. Starts looking at things from that vantage point where the manifestation has not yet begun. Actually, reasoning cannot take us, but if you read all the entire Purana, they will start with the story of Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva. Bhagavad Puran for a long time, it's not about earth. It's still going on in some subtle plane. Aircrafts are flying. It's not about this world. It's the Lok of Gandharva. Much later, things will precipitate. So pure reason can take us to that point where we are not yet, and it's clear. We see in that clear light. For example, clear light. The Divine Mother has called. That's okay. Like Matsya Avatar. Divine Mother, okay. That's enough. You may have 100 defects. Doesn't matter. That carries, like, ancient time when Dut used to go. The king's, whatever he said, the king was supposed to honor and respect him. Because he is simply a messenger. I'll see how this story has a relevance. So when Hanuman goes, they try everything and then they say, no, he's after all a Dut. Don't kill him. But we can punish him. Now you see the problem. If somebody says something to us which we don't like, maybe he's a Dut. Maybe the divine wants to say something. He has made somebody dear to me speak. Perhaps nobody like that little child telling the emperor, you are naked. You are not wearing a cloth. That's why divine always keeps some people like that near us. Even Kabir has said, no, nindak niyare rakhiye. We start feeling, why my life is so horrible. let me find somebody who will always praise me, and you will surely find somebody who will praise you. ... only in the beginning. After some time, the same person will start giving the same experience. Because they have not learned. So when we look at life in that sense, it changes its meaning. Better learn from one and only person rather than... So, clear, pure, subtle and flexible mind. So that means I have no preconceived notions. We make preconceived notions. God is good, yes. Then why somebody died? Now this is my logical preconceived notion that death is bad. How do I know? Maybe he is born in a very good family now. Maybe he is after departing saying good riddance. And maybe even his very loved one after some time says good riddance. So, क्या वसीयत छोड़ के गया है कि नहीं? Has he left his? So we see immediate and we draw conclusions. So we should have a subtle and flexible mind. We look at outward things. If you look at with a rigid mind, then Pandavas must have been great sinners. That's why they had so much suffering. Actually, if you read, and Draupadi, you just wonder. I don't think any princess ever in the entire history of mankind has suffered like this, the way she suffered. To be dragged to the court, to be undressed, disrobed, and everybody in the presence who are laughing, who are calling names. But what is Draupadi's truth? She is Mahakali. This is the truth. If you read the Mahabharata, you go to Mahakali took the form of Draupadi. And that's why when we read Helen of Troy in Ilion, see how when we don't have preconceived notions, many people find it difficult. Because they see outwardly, oh, Helen ran away with Paris. Very bad girl, very bad girl. That's how people judge. And when the Trojan War is going to take place, Sri Aurobindo writes in Ilion, Helen realizes why she came now, that mission is going to be accomplished. She was Mahakali's Ansha, she had come for the fall of Ilion. The Troy, fall of Troy. Because now there is a logic to it, it had developed, but everything else around had not developed, so that's a long story. So Helen says, happy was I when I fell in love with this Prince Charming, happy when I crossed my husband's door and came here, happy when I lived with him all these years, happy that today he goes to war and Troy is burning. She realizes. And that's why at the end also people cannot understand her, what she does. So after the war is over, even Achilles has died, Paris has died, everybody. Then they come, conqueror, Menelaus, her husband, and the king Agamemnon. So when she sees Menelaus, she does nothing. She just says, I am yours. And he is so overtaken. Helen is the most beautiful woman ever known. He says, oh, I am so lucky, so fortunate. Forgets everything and the two go together. If you see it from a moral standpoint, you cannot understand the whole thing. But Helen is not just a vibhuti, but she is a divine action which has gone. So you see, we have to see that subtle reason which doesn't fix preconditions. God must do this and in this way. Means basically God should be my servant. I will make the plan, God must accomplish. Fortunately or unfortunately, he doesn't, he listens to our plans. But he loves us most when he acts according to his plan. So this is where Sri Aurobindo says that heaven's wiser love rejects the mortal's prayer. So sometimes we don't know if he's listening to our prayers. Does he really love me? Or I am yet not in his good books. So anyway, so clear reason, flexible mind, not fixed on anything. In order that we may fall as little as possible into that ordinary mental habit of our kind which turns truth itself into a purveyor of errors. So what is truth? God is Param Dayalu. He is ultimate mercy. Is truth. How it becomes a purveyor of errors? Why that child died. Now, when we know the full truth, we will say, oh, it is His infinite mercy. That's why the great ones have often learned to say this: Thou art indeed the all merciful. Maybe we don't understand the full thing. It will be revealed to us if we allow time. But we are very impatient. So he's saying how truth can become a purveyor of error. That clarification, the habit of clear logical reasoning, culminating in the method of metaphysical dialectics, does help to accomplish and its part in the preparation of knowledge. So he is saying that by logical you cannot arrive at divine reality, but if you are habituated to a clear reasoning, for example, as he says, first I should be convinced that death is bad. One example. Clear reasoning that losing in a game of dice everything that you had ever earned is necessarily bad. Now when you see the total truth, you say, oh, thank God, that's why Pandavas became what they became. But the quick, hasty judgments. So that's what he is reminding us, that this habit of the logical mind, it should learn to see deep, to see in wide terms, and then it will be able to become an instrument of truth. But by itself, this logical mind cannot arrive at truth. But it helps to prepare. So page 382, third line from above. So logical mind has its own place. So because people say, oh, it is too logical. No. Life divine is spiritual truths, and we'll see here. But he is expressing in very clear logic because that's where we are. He could have easily said, Bacha main bol raha hu, therefore you believe. But he wants us to also pull us up a little. So lovely. A teacher who gives all the answers to the child, he doesn't let him labor. What kind of a teacher he would be? So he gives us hints, suggestions, then tells us to develop so that we may develop into a mind like his. So he says, it is much more efficiently, it means logical mind, it is much more efficiently a guardian against error than a discoverer of truth. See, that's the whole thing about the story of Socrates, where he was declared by the Delphi goddess as the most knowledgeable person. And Socrates says, but I don't think I really know. And then he goes asking everybody. And then he says, now I know, because oracle cannot be wrong. And he says, now I know. Nobody knows anything, but at least I know that I don't know. Everybody believes they know. See the same truth of Isha Upanishad. Avijñātam vijanata, vijñātam avijanata. He who knows it not, knows it. And he who knows it not. So this is where, if you look at it, these paradoxes, life divine, Isha Upanishad is excellent preparation for the human mind to grow into this state where we can understand the life divine. So logical habit of mind, few lines below, may even become a stumbling block. So this is its advantage, that it removes errors. So it's important. Otherwise, WhatsApp people they come to me, ye lene se wo ho jata hai, wo khane se aaj, okay, fine, everything is fine. But logical mind will tell you. So it has its own place. But if we believe we will know truth, that ultimate truth which transcends, then that's where we are making a mistake. So what is the advantage of logical mind? He tells us, the very faculty which gives it its peculiar use. For it is so accustomed to making distinctions and dwelling upon distinctions and working by distinctions that it is always a little at sea when distinctions have to be overridden and overpassed. Logical mind, and also it fixes things. So sometimes it has happened, somebody spoke about someone, oh, he is like this and that. So sometimes I just ask, forever? Now this is a question which changes you. Am I fixing the person forever? Not allowing that there is growth, there is evolution? Human beings change, they evolve. If Ratnakar can change into Valmiki, so people may say, but it may never happen. Don't worry. He may not, if Ratnakar doesn't change into Valmiki, you will change into Mirabai. Anyways, because you start seeing Krishna everywhere. So things change, they evolve. But logical mind fixes things. You see, all alchemy is based on this idea that nothing is fixed, even at the most physical level. That's how cloning comes, because somebody said, is the cellular function actually fixed? No, at the stem cell level, it's not fixed. Does cancer mean definite death? No. Maybe there is something which I am missing. What is impossible for the omnipotent reality? So it depends. So there is a place of this limited reason, but there is a higher reason. So this comes when we speak about the real problem is, he describes one by one. For example, when we talk about unity, where is the scope of the individual? So we come to this passage, like Buddha's story, where somebody went to Buddha and said, you know what, I think God doesn't exist. Because that's how people interpret Buddha. Nastikvad, Buddha and Mahavira. So Buddha said, you are right. Then another person comes after some time, he says, I am so sure that God exists. Buddha said, you are right. Then the disciple who was listening, he says, sir, how can both be right? So Buddha said, you are also right. Now the story is very beautiful, subtly instructive, like a Zen story. Now Buddha doesn't ask him what you mean by God. So we all have our own ideas of God, conceptions of God. And for a moment it helps us. Fair enough. But as we advance, we enter into the vastness of God till we find God is everything and everywhere. So, in first step, we have to break that conception. When that conception breaks, we say there is no God. Why? Because this wouldn't have happened if God was there. Why? Because God is supposed to be like this. So we have made a whole chain of logic in our head. But if there is God, He will act according to His will. He is not in the habit of consulting us. Thank God. We would have created a mess of the world if He consulted us. He acts according to His logic, which you don't understand. So we hastily declare there is no God. All right. You have taken a step. The other person is probably where he realizes, I may not understand, but there is a divine reality. Even logically there would be, yes, you are right. And both are right depending on the time, space and the context. So this is where Zen stories work like that. So Sri Aurobindo says, page 382, the first difficulty for the reason is that it has always been accustomed to identify the individual self with the ego. Not only the individual, even everybody around. I remember one person who came from great seer like Raman Maharishi. What did he see? He said, I didn't like him. I said, why? What is it that? No, he was digging the nose. What does it matter? You didn't go there for that. I met somebody we were going away from Pondicherry, an American lady who suddenly says, very angry, India is this, that, 100 things. I say, what is your problem? What happened to you? Probably she was on drugs or drunk, whatever. She says, I bought this purse and see what has happened to it. It is broken. So I said, oh, you came all the way to India to buy a purse which you could have got easily in US much better. Now you see the perspective changes. You don't come India for that. Of course, we want a day when India will make very good purses and fill it with money and give. But the point is, that's not the USP. You come for a spiritual truth. People go to Varanasi, you can see the dirty ghats or you can feel the living presence of Ma Ganga. Of course, we want everything should be beautiful. This is not to justify. But this just to say the logical reason creates impossible difficulties. It is either this or that. Much of problem in life, human relationship is because of that. We think this person is like this. Why? Because he doesn't do because the way you want the person to do. He may not do that, but he may be extremely caring in his own way, and you have missed the point if you have not seen that aspect. So you see, this applies everywhere. That logical mind fixes things and takes it. So what does it do here? Accustomed to identify the individual self with the ego. What is the ego? My outer nature, behavior, certain stock thoughts, feelings. Oh, this is the person. Certain tendencies, traits. This is the ego self. This is one part of the person. True. But there is another part of the individual which you may not be able to see. And that was the original idea of sati, that you have to see God even in your husband. And when you, of course, it should be the other way around. People often ask why only woman was supposed to see God in man. I said because, so people ask me, I said because she is capable of seeing, man can never see God in woman because he is such an idiot. So, the problem is given only to somebody who can solve it. That was my answer. I said, see, that's why, because it's about the greatness of a woman who can see even in his most nincompoop man something of the God's presence. But if you ask a man to see, he has to put all the criteria, cooking food, good food, taking care of children, because he's the executrix. He won't be able to feel that she loves in the heart. What are you doing? That's the only thing he is seeing, action. Not what is behind the action. So, this is just to say that how the difficulty is we identify with the ego with the individual. This is the first difficulty. If that were so, then by the transcendence of the ego, the individual would abolish his own existence. Very logical. If I am Dr. Alok Pandey, then when the doctor is gone and the Alok goes into a 6 and Pandey is pronounced as Pondi, Ponds, whatever it is, then I have some people are very rigid about it. How you pronounce or write their name. My name they write in so many ways. Aloki. All Bengalis write like Aloke. Some write Aloka. Some write double A Aloke. And they ask me, I say, no, it's okay. As long as you mean the same person, I am not changing by my name. So you see, it becomes an impossible problem. That you have put a problem which doesn't exist. So ego does that. It picks up certain traits, tendencies and identifies with that and doesn't know that there is its own deeper truth. And others also in their dealing identify you with only that trait which gets fixated into their mind and once becomes forever. Because mind is habit, no? It sees and then it feels this is the only truth. If that were so, then by the transcendent we'll get rid of the individuality, if this are only truth. Few lines below, but what is this strongly separative self-experience that we call ego? Means if ego is the only truth, then by transcending the ego, individuality vanishes. So he's saying, what is it? First we must understand. What is it that we call ego? It is nothing fundamentally real in itself, but only a practical construction of our consciousness devised to centralize the activities of nature in us. Oh, very profound truth. Somebody who is always fighting. So one person, he's a fighter cock. Another person may say he's Ch3 in the making. His perspective changes. And mother, how she would deal. There is a boy who was hitting people. The complaint went to the mother. And mother understood. She said, I know, you think you are very strong. Yes, mother, I like to. He would like to bully people. Mother says, okay, tell me, what requires more strength? To hit someone when you feel angry? Or to put both your hands in your pocket and not express that anger? He said, putting hands in the pocket and not express requires great power. He said, see, you love power, no? This is more powerful. So he would do, every time he would get angry, he would put his hands in the pocket fold. Conserving power is a greater power than just letting it flow. This is the true Kshatriya. See, that's the difference between Arjuna and Karna and Duryodhan. He is driven by ambition, he is driven by all kinds of, he is using all kinds of weapon. What makes Arjun so special that he has got Divya Astra. But in the entire war, he uses it only once, that too at the behest of Krishna. He uses Anjali Astra over Karna. Why he does it for Karna? Because Sri Krishna says he deserves to go by the Divya Astra. I know you can kill him now by anything, but use the divine weapon, which will be rightly put to use, because somebody who is destroyed by Divya Astra is released into moksha. Now, this is where the difference is. That one side, unbridled power expression, another side, if you conserve and change, what is it? Maybe it is the soul of a Kshatriya, we don't know, who is modifying it, and right now, he is acting under ego, become a cruel tyrant. But the same person, when he changes, as the mythical story of Ashoka, I don't want to go into whether Ashoka actually renounced arms or not, that's a different story altogether. But the story carries that meaning that the same person who was annexing kingdoms became a person who was now annexing other kind of kingdoms for a greater truth. That's how Buddhism, at least his children, spread. Whether he became a Buddhist or not, well, I don't want to go into history. But there is a truth behind that story, and as the story goes, the same story where it seems that an apparition of Buddha appeared before Ashoka. And this Buddha in apparition asked him, "Who are you?" Stops his horse. He says, "I am the great Samrat, Emperor Ashoka. You don't know me? Anyways, how would you know perhaps? You are just a mendicant." So he asks, "What do you do?" He says, "I conquer domains." And he says, "What about you? Who are you? Stopping my way." So he says, "I am also an emperor and I conquer domains." What? Looking like a pauper. "You are an emperor?" "Yes. I have conquered my inner kingdom. I have conquered the domains of mind and heart and vital. So I am also an emperor." This is a story. Of course, stories are a way of, don't go into whether it's true or not, like every mythological or stories from the Puranas you start, but it conveys a meaning. So, in the beginning, things are crude. In manifestation, when they grow up, they become. So, that's why there is hope. So, there is one way to look at ego, its limitations, and feel it's excised. But there is another way to look at it, that it is the outer shell of a beautiful fruit which is developing inside. So if you wait for the fruit to develop, that's where the whole logic of evolution comes in. So we come to page 383. So what is the ego? He first describes that it is a formation of mental vital which distinguishes itself from the rest of being. So that's how we say, this is me, this is my thought, this is my way, etc., etc. Page 383, but in the end, we have to see that our individualization is only a superficial formation, a practical selection and limited conscious synthesis for the temporary utility of life in particular body. Or else it is a constantly changing and developing synthesis pursued through successive lives in successive bodies. Behind it, there is a consciousness, a Purusha, who is not determined or limited by his individualization or by this synthesis, but on the contrary determines, supports, and yet exceeds it. If you read a sentence, it sounds, oh my God. But when you grow up in the Indian culture, many of these things become so obvious. So in Indian culture, if a child was extremely destructive, they didn't label him as ADHD. I have heard this actually. They said, "Kahan se Rudra avatar aa gaya hai?" See, it changes the perspective completely. If he's Rudra, it needs to be channelized. If he's ADHD, it needs to be treated by a doctor by giving medicines. And you see how we have seen an exponential rise of ADHD diagnosis. All over the world. In India, where it was not known, when I was reading psychiatry, I was told, in India we don't see many, we don't need to read. Now every second person is being 20 years old, 25 years, and they say very proudly because it's very, when a doctor labels you, it has become a prestige issue, no? Oh, I am suffering from this illness. So sometimes I see people coming at 22, 23. I am an ADHD. I say they're not a matter of great pride. A psychiatrist has seen me, psychiatrists become like, uh, but that's not, you get rid of the formation. Rudra energy is misdirected like Veerbhadra can destroy everything. Rudra energy directed rightly. That's why we have Bhadrakali and Rudrakali. The same energy can build something beautiful if we learn how to direct it and channelize it. So it changes the perspective. That's how it was. Even with naughty children, I have heard this. Chota sa Krishna hai. Because he was very naughty. It's to be Krishna hai. At least it's nice, no, that you feel, okay, you are Krishna. Okay, then you grow up and you develop certain tendencies like Krishna. But it is better than saying, oh, what a naughty child. Show to a psychiatrist. So that's why he's saying we have to discover the truth behind the individualization. There are Rudra forces which, when someone told Aurobindo that two sadhaks fought with each other. Now Aurobindo is neither judging, not saying, oh, is it? They don't know, they should, be taught, trained, they should do meditation to become quiet. Aurobindo says, well, when heat meets heat, and it's almost midsummer now, he revealed an inner truth of heat meeting heat. They are full of energy. So when two energetic beings meet each other, what is going to happen? Explosion. And when it is midsummer, when there is a lot of stress and pressure for the change, all these tendencies come out. See how the Lord saw it. So this is the difference that we need to understand. That they are a temporary utility, and that's why we have in our culture so many beautiful things. Like Ashwatthama is cursed by Shri Krishna. Not forever, for 3000 years, if you go into the original story. He never was immortal, by the way. Bhagavad doesn't say. Another place it says. So it's a curse. But the same Ashwatthama in the next Manvantara, he becomes one of the Manus. So things change and evolve. What we see today is only a shadow of what is yet to come. So it opens doors towards understanding things, towards dealing with things. One more line we'll read. That which he selects from in order to construct this synthesis is who selects the Purusha. Total experience of the world being. Therefore, our individualization exists by virtue of the world being, but also by virtue of a consciousness which uses the world being for experience of its possibility of individuality. And that was the reason why the deeper knowledge was not meant for everybody. Because you will create chaos. So Kshatriyas were not given, or Kshatriyas were given a kind of knowledge which was denied even to Brahman. Very interesting, because they had wrestled with the world forces. And there was a kind of knowledge which you cannot give to the uninitiate. Why? Because imagine, telling a businessman, all belongs to God. What will he do? He'll become like Guru Nanak, that, he has to give the measure of some 14 measures for some money. He starts saying, 1, 2, 3, 4, when he comes to Tera. He says Tera. Then he again puts another Tera. 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 Your, thou. So when the father comes, he says, what happened? He says, what can I do? My whole consciousness was stuck at Tera. 13 or yours. I couldn't proceed that. How can I, after saying it is yours, take it back and say after 14, no. I have to give. Once I felt it is divine, I gave and gave and gave. So that's why let each one, that's how the world arrangement has been made. If you interfere with it without the right understanding, you will create chaos. Of course, the outer form has to go. One doesn't become a Brahmin and Kshatriya by changing your surname. There are people with surname Singh, but they are darpok like mice. But name is Singh. You wonder what mistake took place. Similarly, there are people who are, Pandeyji, but Pandeyji is eyeing on, what I am going to get after this Dakshina. That is not Brahman. Brahman is supposed to ask nothing. And whatever he gets, he receives it. He receives it as a gift of the divine. But the moment you start asking, earning money, hold courses, you are not fit to receive knowledge or give knowledge. So when we understand things in that perspective, everything becomes meaningful. So that's how individualization. Last line we'll read. We have then to recognize on this paragraph, we have then to recognize these two terms of our existence, a world being and an individualizing consciousness. He's not yet going into, he says the world being decides and determines that which part will be filled in which one. Pandit Jasraj once went to sing in a temple and everybody there was a beeline to do pranam to the Vigraha of Shri Krishna. He has noted it, and I have heard it actually. So Jasraj wants to go, but there is a long queue. So he's thinking maybe later on. Then he has a vision of Shri Krishna. He says, Shri Krishna tells him, let them do the puja their way. For you, your worship of me is through your music. See, it changes the whole perspective. That one is this way and the other is, he's not cancelling this or that. It's a question of where we are. So there is an individualizing consciousness. It means the world being has created Jasraj for the moment. For singing, what was that famous one of Makhan? Maiya mori main nahi makhan khayo. Of course, written by Surda. But when he sings, it's amazing. At the end, he says, main ne hi makhan khayo. So he has to tell the truth. Kana has to tell the truth. So he says, main ne hi makhan khayo. That is Surdas. At the end, he says, Maiya mori main ne hi makhan khayo. Actually, I have only eaten everything. So, that's what we have to understand. There is a purpose why the world being has individualized someone in a certain way, and he must discover that to start with. And he closes with this, which is the cause of all our self-experience and world experience. This is how the divine wants me to experience life. And that is the great saying of Swami Vivekananda when, somebody asked him, sir, your Vedanta, all that is fine. But Shankaracharya doesn't say so. Guess what Swami Vivekananda replied? He could have given a very logical answer. But he says, yes, but I, Vivekananda, say so. Period. That's how it has been revealed to him. He has to be true to himself. So he is not negating. He says, yes, that is true. But in me, it has been revealed like this. And therefore, I must express what has been revealed to me. So there is a truth of the individual, at least. He is not just a maya and moha and to be negated. And there is only that anirvachaniya, impersonal universality. So this much, Aurobindo, he will take it to great depths. We'll meet tomorrow, same time, 5:15, Jai Ma.